50% of all Americans believe in UFOs, and that figure jumped a little bit after that blast.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rooster Crows podcast. I'm Rob Deere, and we have a very, very special guest today. A great friend of mine, a great teammate, and my producer, Garrett, has told me numerous times over the last month, you catch him, find him, because everybody wants to have him on. So I'm proud to announce my good friend, Mickey Tettleton. Welcome, Mick.
Thanks, pal. It's good to see you, man. You look good.
You too. I want to talk to you just kind of about our Detroit days, Tiger days, and I want to talk because it's really impressive when you look back and you think about what you did as a catcher every day and a catcher that can hit 30 home runs. And today, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it's it was obviously a blast, man. I mean, having you as a teammate and the rest of the guys, Tram, Sess, Gibby, list just goes on. And we had a really, really good offensive team. We could do some damage. I still run into people that pitched against us that did not like pitching against us. And it was fun, though, man. I enjoyed every minute of it. You look back and wish you could have done certain things a little bit differently here and there, yeah. But overall, man, it was a blast. I had a great time, and wouldn't change anything, really.
No, me neither. And you know what's really cool, and not like we did in other cities or whatever, but for a lot of guys that could hit a ball 500 feet and swing and miss, I don't think my 3 years in Detroit, I don't think I ever heard a boo bird one time. I don't think we ever got booed for that.
No, I don't remember that. Like I said, we were a very, very good offensive team. Now, you did mention we could swing and miss too. There was some nights where we wore out a trail back to the dugout, but I mean, top to bottom, I mean, when you look at guys like Tony Phillips, who led off with 19, 20 home runs, and then the list just goes. I mean, Lou hit 20-some home runs. Obviously, he did. You, Gibby, Travis Fryman.
Right.
The list just goes on and on of guys up and down the lineup that could do some damage. But once again, I mean, we had a tendency to swing and miss a little bit as well. But what a fun group to be with. We had an absolute blast. It was a great locker room to be in. I think that things probably missing in these games today is the locker room, man, the camaraderie. All these guys, they come in, they want to get on their social media first thing. And, how much baseball did we learn and talk about? Just hanging out and having a beer or two after the game, just chilling, And that's the part to me that I miss the most about the game is the hanging out part.
And that, that's what everybody says. I mean, I miss the competition of being challenged each night, but there's nothing like the plane rides, an occasional bus ride, hotel stuff, or whatever it was. I mean, we were all together, and it was just. I mean, you'll probably say the same thing. You were Oakland, Baltimore, Texas, Detroit, not in that order. Yeah. But like, you played on teams where just a bunch of good camaraderie was important. Right. What's cool is, I don't know if you remember this, but we would go into a town and the other team, they always hit before we did. And so then we would get ready to hit. And I remember seeing like 10 or 15 guys still on their bench because they wanted to watch us take BP. And BP was like, I mean, that was the funnest part of the whole day other than the game. But it was just, all of us together, it was a lot of fun.
We were hard on the ball budget in batting practice. We handed out a lot of souvenirs, and there were times where guys would stick around out there and watch us. I mean, I remember for myself, I'd always stick around and watch Bo Jackson take BP. I was just amazed.
Oh yeah,
watching him
Canseco, McGuire, and all of them. They were so fun to watch.
And for us, it was kind of funny because, like we always tease, like our last round was a hit and run, and the usher in the right field bleachers covering, you know. So, uh,
Yeah.
but it was just a great group of guys to be around, man. We hung out, and it was the same way in Texas. You know, when I finished up my career down there, same atmosphere. Great bunch of guys showed up. If you were hurt, you played, and I think
Yeah.
that what was so cool that guys just went out and they played the game. They wanted to be competitive. We did the best we could. Some nights were good, some nights weren't so good. But
Yeah.
it was a great bunch of people to be around.
Yeah, there was a couple times. I mean, there were a couple of those years we could lose like 21-19. You know, we could always score runs.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just how about our fearless leader Sparky? Like,
Well, Sparky was he was funny. I mean, he would come by, and you remember. I mean, you were over on the other side of the locker room, over there by the training, in the training room, and he'd come out of his office in those grungy shorts and his t-shirt and his slippers, and he usually had his pipe in his mouth, and he'd walk
yep,
by, he'd say, "What's up, shit face?" And I
yeah,
say,
yeah,
"Stayed me all day long." I was like, "I guess okay, I'm good to go today."
yeah,
But he was a wonderful man. I think that he still tried to teach the game, even as far into it as he was. Sometimes he was right. Sometimes, it had passed him by a little bit, but he was a great guy to play for. I
you
remember
know,
he always told the pitchers, like, "Boys, when I come out to the mound, I don't want you I want you to stay there. I don't slam the ball in my hand or anything like that." And I'd go out there, and I'd always put my head down. I'd be kicking dirt, and I heard a ball slam. I can't remember who the pitcher was, and I heard the ball. He slammed it into Sparky's hand. And I thought, "Oh my God, here we go. I mean, it's fixed to be." And he looked up at me and he goes, "Mick," he goes, "I think you're the worst catcher I've ever had." And then he started laughing. And,
yeah,
we would score 5 runs, go out and give up 6 the next
right,
inning. And it's nothing against the guys we had. I mean, we were just a little bit short on pitching. If we'd had some pitching, there's no telling
yeah,
how many on the East, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But overall, I mean, just a great man. He was Captain Hook for a lot of reasons, and I still remember when I got traded over there. Tram called me and he said, "Just whatever you do, just listen to Sparky and just nod and say okay." And the first spring training, he came out and he does his welcome back speech and all this stuff, and he says, "Boys," says, "I'm not God, but I'm the closest thing to it around here." I was like, "Oh my line, what have we gotten into here?" But he was a great man, fun to play for.
And I remember you always had a really good rapport with him. You were always, about pitching and stuff. And how much does Sparky love the 3-run homer? Like
Oh,
he
absolutely.
loved it.
Oh, absolutely. And he
He talked
loved
about,
when you look at our teams and the teams that he loved veteran players. He
yeah,
did
I agree.
he had very little patience for young players, and in particular young pitchers. He had very little
Yes.
patience for those guys, but he still tried to teach. But his teams were veteran teams. We pretty much managed ourselves,
Yeah,
and
that's exactly
he
right.
he knew he didn't have to do that, that we could govern ourselves and take care of ourselves.
And we didn't want him to have to worry about that. We
No,
wanted it to be easy for him. And it
no,
was like
yeah,
we
and realistically, I mean, we had some guys that had fun every once in a while, but I mean, you know, guys were very professional about what they did, and
yeah.
I think they knew
The
that.
bell rang, we played. We played
Absolutely,
hard.
yeah, and then guys played hurt, and that's
Yeah.
that things that he liked. Is that you go out there and you play hard, and you play hurt, and we'll take our chances.
I want to ask you because how rare is it to have a 6 foot, 200 pound switch hitting catcher that can catch and throw and handle pitchers? And it's like that was you were a special person on that team,
Well,
And it's like
I appreciate that, man. It was I enjoyed being behind the plate. Now physically, am I paying for it these days and stuff like that? Yeah.
yeah,
Did I pay for it back then? Yeah. But it was just such a great position to play because you're involved in every pitch. You
oh
know,
yeah,
and so it was always fun trying to strategize, try to get hitters out, with the pitchers that were out there. And then, if you were able to do something offensively, that was a bonus. So for me, it was just, I loved being back there. I also like having the days where DH too, just to
Yeah.
get a little break off the legs and stuff like that. But, once again, it was just such a special lineup to be a part of with you and Sess and the rest of the boys.
And people that never got to see old Detroit Tiger Stadium, the fans behind home plate, man, they were right on top of you. And
Yeah.
you could almost hear Ernie Harwell, and you could almost hear guys talking up in the booth. They were so close to you. So that had to be really cool being a catcher there. But you
Yeah,
played,
it was a great atmosphere. It was a
right?
dungeon. It was, Tiger Stadium was a dungeon. There was times where we come in, there's no hot water in April and you're freezing your butt off out there. But it always kind of reminded me like Fenway Park. It was just, I don't know if intimate was the right word, but it was
Good,
just,
good word. Yeah.
yeah, it was just cool.
Quaint. Yeah.
That
Comfortable.
fans were right there, and sometimes you could hear a little bit more than you wanted to. But hey, they paid to get in there, and they would say it. But overall, I think that the fans of Detroit were awesome to us. Even
Oh, they were.
times we were struggling, they were awesome.
Yeah, I had the same thing in Milwaukee. That Midwest people are just fantastic people, and especially in those towns because they're not a big market town. So the fans, they live and die for the Brewers, live and die for the Detroit Tigers, and
And
I like that atmosphere.
yeah, and Detroit it is such a great sport town. When you
Oh
got the
yeah,
Red Wings, when we would come back from spring training to open the season, the Red Wings were usually in the playoffs, and we go watch those guys play, or they come out
I
and watch.
remember.
And it's just such a great sports town. And if you're playing well there, man, they support the heck out of you. And
Yeah.
and they came out when we weren't playing well, and especially like when you played Toronto, uh,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
you didn't know if they were Toronto fans there or Detroit fans there because the place was loud all the time.
yeah. Tell me about when did you start switch hitting? Because that's pretty cool.
Um, I was a senior in high school, and we would go out in the summer. And we had about 10 baseballs. We didn't have what these kids have these days. And it took us a couple hours to hit 5 of them because we couldn't throw strikes. Then we'd have to go pick them up. And so one day we just decided at the end of it, we're like, okay, jump on the other side of the plate and we're going to take some swings. And I hit a couple of balls hard. And I thought, well, okay, man, that felt kind of good. So we came back the next day and did it again. And that's basically how it started with us, a senior in high school.
Really?
Yeah, I
Isn't
was a
that crazy?
natural right-handed hitter, and just and that was
Yeah,
the only this day that I did left-handed. Everything else
I-
is right-handed.
yeah. You see, I'm the same. Like I'm kind of like that. I write left-handed, eat left-handed, and I always ask my Dad, why didn't you let me hit left-handed? And he said, yeah, I tried, but you always wanted to hit right-handed. But
There's,
it's
I
really
mean,
cool.
yeah, there's so many advantages to it if kids can do it. Now,
Oh,
you know, it calls for a little bit extra work, which you and I were never afraid of work. We were always down in the
no.
cave, down there with Larry Herndon, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
there's so many advantages to it. Balls are always coming into you.
Oh,
But at the same time, it could be doubly frustrating if both sides went south. Which
yeah.
didn't happen very often. Usually one side or the other you could kind of rely on, but when both of them went bad, man, it was awful.
It's cool because it gives you that opportunity not to see that breaking ball coming at you. Everything's coming away, and it's so much easier to see it. So that's a huge advantage. But I talked to Chili Davis, and I talked to a lot of people that were switch hitters, and it's to be able to hit major league pitching one way is we know how difficult it is. But on the other side, to be a switch hitter, to be able to naturally do that and feel comfortable, that takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. And what would you
Yeah.
tell kids? Start early, right?
Yeah, you got to start early, but you have to be committed to it. If
Yeah.
let's say you're a natural right-handed hitter, you can't, you're struggling a little bit. You can't all of a sudden jump
Switch.
on right side just to get an at bat so you can try to get a hit. If you're going to do it, you got to be committed to it. If it's a right-handed pitcher, you hit left, and vice versa, left on right. So that's the hard part with trying to get young kids to do it, because they get frustrated and they don't give it time to develop.
Right.
So that would be my first thing to do. And then obviously you got to work twice as hard at it. And you know as well as I do, man, the only way that we get good at anything is you got to work at it. And
Right.
so and I do some work with some high school kids and some college kids. And one of the first things I tell them about hitting is first of all, it's the hardest thing to do in sports. There's
The hardest.
harder to do in sports. And I think that sometimes when you hold a baseball up and you hold the head of the bat up next to the baseball, there's not a lot of room there. When
No.
they look at it, I mean, it's a fraction one-way ground ball, fraction one-way fly ball. Um,
Right.
but I tell kids, like, you guys are going to be huge successes being massive failures. You know,
Right.
how are you going to handle that 70% failure rate to be that success? You know, in any other business or profession for that matter, athletics wise, you're not going to be around wise for long. But
Right.
in football, if you fail 70% of the time these days, you're a gazillionaire. So trying to get young kids to understand that, yes, you are going to fail. You hit a line drive at somebody, it's a great at bat. As you're a dumb hitter, you don't try to go through them, go around them,
Yeah.
but and that's the biggest thing. And I try to get kids to understand, what are your strengths and weaknesses as a hitter. You know, where do I want a fastball and a plus plus count? Where, you know, do I need to work on this away or breaking balls or something like that? Because there's a bunch of dudes that can't hit really good breaking balls. You can turn on TV and watch it every night, but there's some dudes that can hit some fastballs. So you better
Oh,
be
yeah.
able,
Yeah.
you better be able to hit a fastball or it'll eat you alive. But
Well, if you can't hit a fastball at that level, you're in trouble.
you're in trouble. But
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing for me, is just trying to stress to them, like, it is a process. It is a journey. You're going to have some great days and you're going to have some really bad days. And how do you handle those bad days? It's like I said, you're going to be a success being a failure. And it's hard to explain to them sometimes. You remember, like, we would go to Seattle and Ken Griffey Jr.'s out there hitting by himself every day around 4 o'clock. And this is
Right.
one of the greatest players that I ever saw. People ask me, like, who would I start with? And I said, King Griffey Jr. That would be the first person I would start with, because that's a franchise type player.
No
And
doubt.
and he was out there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon hitting by himself, working on his craft. And I think people think that, oh, they just, a guy like that just throws his glove on the field and he's an all-star. No, it doesn't
No.
work. You have to work at it. And that's the only way you get better, is working at it. And kids understand, or at least I'm trying to pound it into their heads. Like, it's hard work working hard, and they look at me like, what'd you just say? I said, it's hard work working hard. And they think about that for a minute and they're like, oh, I understand now what you're trying to say. But
Yeah.
it is a lot of fun working with them, though. Young kids,
Oh, I
college,
agree. I
because
agree.
they are so interested in learning and wanting to get better. They're not too entitled yet, you know. Uh, So it's fun, and it's fun to see the relationships that you can develop with these kids when they go on and do some things.
There's nothing better, and I know you've witnessed, or I know you've experienced this, but when you have a young player and he's getting lessons from you, and then you go watch a game and you see him get a couple of hits, and you see him do the things that you're teaching them, and you're seeing that, and you see that how it looks on his face, and how they feel about getting a base hit. I mean, that's the satisfaction to
Oh,
me, because
absolutely.
everything that we know, all the knowledge we know, it's nothing that we invented. It's something that we were given, and it's given from 35 years of baseball through all kinds of people. And then it's like you make up your own plan and you stick to that plan. You know,
Yeah. And Rob, I try to tell kids, like, it's fun to watch them when it happens. And I was in Cape Cod a few years ago coaching up there, and to still get text, from guys that are now in Double A,
yes,
and stuff like that, the relation, that to me is what is so much fun and so gratifying now. And, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to
No,
hitting. We're just trying
no.
to go a little smoother and a little faster. And because you can stand any way you want. I mean, you look at me, you look at Julio Franco, you put us side by side when our front foot hit the ground. We're both in the same place.
Right.
So trying to teach kids that there's no one way to stand. If you can stand on your head and hit, stand on your head. And there's no
They'll
one.
find a place for you to play. If you can
Yeah,
hit, they'll.
absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm a prime example, for me to go from behind the plate to going out to the outfield to playing first base. It wasn't because I was a
Yeah.
good fielder, wasn't because I was a good first baseman. Just every once in a while they threw it where I was swinging and might hit a 3-run homer.
You weren't just a catcher. You weren't a big, like there's catchers that are absolutely the greatest catchers at all, but there's no offense. You were a great catcher, and you had the possibility of 35, 40 homers, and you did a couple times, and it's like that. When you look back on that, I'm really proud of you because I saw how hard you played. I saw how every day you were in there, and that's a testimony. I've had 3 back surgeries, 4 knee surgeries, and it's just like stuff we have to deal with. But I always tell everybody every surgery I've had is well worth it.
Yeah. Well, this last one I had was number 19. So
Was it?
yeah,
How many back surgeries?
I've had 2 back surgeries, 2 neck surgeries, 1 Achilles tendon, 12 knee operations. Both of them are replaced.
No,
Yeah.
I
So
didn't.
yeah, I've got body parts all over the country, but at the same time, we wouldn't trade it for anything,
Nothing.
because we wanted to play. We didn't care where we hit in the lineup. We didn't care where we were playing. We just wanted to play, and
Yeah,
and that's one of the things that appreciate about you but other guys that we played with, and that was cool. But that was the way it was back there. You got a little dinged up, so what?
yeah. Suck it up. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody. You never even. We never even knew who was hurt on the team unless they came and told us, or your buddy or whatever says, "Oh yeah, this is hurting," and nobody would ever say anything. We never even talked about being hurt.
Well,
It's just like everybody's hurting, just
yeah,
play,
people ask me, is like, when did you stop feeling good? And I was like, the second day of spring training. You know,
right? That
that's
was like,
that's when I
oh
was feeling good. And
yeah,
but at the same time, man, it was so much worth it. It really was.
yeah, it sure was, and it was really cool having you as a teammate. And I
Yeah.
always hear this. I always say like social media stuff, and kids will talk about. Well, I remember Mickey Tettleton, and all the young players that you listen to or they talk to, they always think you had a super cool stance and a super cool swing, which
I
I
did.
did too. I love watching you hit. It was
I
always fun.
I up a lot of kids with that.
And you know what I was going to tell you? I remember individually, if we were having a bad day, you could go back to the bench and sit down, and whoever was coming up next, or next, or next, or next, like you could sit there and watch their at bats. Don't turn your head because it could be a 3-run homer any second,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you
Well,
could have a bad day, but something fun was going to happen in that game. I guarantee you.
yeah, and one thing we were really good at was watching opposing pitchers and picking up pitches. Pitchers
Yeah,
giving away. The whole bench was really good at it, and I think that was part of what made us good. Was you let us know what's coming, and I like my chances.
oh yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, and guys were just like radars on the bench, man, watching guys, and when we got him and we confirmed it,
I want to bring up a name real quick because he was such a special guy on that team, and we lost him a couple years ago, Dave Bergman. And he was such a special guy, and he was big on all that stuff. He didn't play every day, but I tell you what, he knew everybody and what was happening, and he was always. And I played with he was my teammate in San Francisco early on in my career. But what a great guy, Bergie.
yeah, I think, Rob, when you talk about the team that we played on, and I think the ultimate compliment that ever got paid to anybody was they were a professional, you know,
Mhm.
true professional. And to me, that was the way you went about your business, the way you went about your game, the way you prepared. And that was our team. But once
Yeah.
again, it was a veteran team that knew what we needed to do to not only take care of ourselves as individuals, but we took care of one another as well.
Yeah.
And that to me, it was a professional team. And once again, that kind of goes back to Sparky. He wanted veteran guys, and just so happened we had some veteran guys that were really damn good.
I used to crack up at this, and I don't know who started. I think you did. But how about when Sparky gave us the break, where it's like we didn't have to wear a sport coat on the plane, and we got into the Wranglers and cowboy boots, and like we were all of us, we all. I think even Seth was wearing cowboy boots. Like it was so fun because we didn't have to dress up, but we kind of had to dress up. So we thought we were dressed up by wearing cowboy boots, and we had
That
all colors. And Henneman and like everybody was wearing cowboy boots. I don't know how it started, but
Yeah, we
it was
we we
fun.
we had a bunch of wannabe rednecks. So
Tell me now, because I've been wanting to talk to you about this. I'm excited to hear about this, but because I had aspirations years ago, maybe sometime I'd like to manage. But tell us about what you're doing now. This is so cool.
and I'd love to get you involved with this, man, because they are definitely looking for professional, good people. But it's Major League Baseball. Unfortunately, a few years ago, when they started taking some of the leagues away, the Appalachian League was one of them, and I think that they knew that they kind of made a hiccup, and they've created this league. There's 10 teams in it, some of the old Appalachian League teams. As for college kids, it's strictly a development league, which I absolutely love because there's no stress on
Huge.
there. I stand up and I stood up in front of them last year and I said, fellas, I don't give a shit if we win this league or not. You leave here better players. That's all I care about.
Good
And
for you.
fortunately, we ended up winning the darn thing. But it's been an absolute blast because that's the part of the game that I love is the development side. And
I
so
do too.
we get young players from across the country. We get Division I, Division II, some JUCO guys. We're allowed a couple of high school guys if they're
Really?
committed, graduated. And it has been an absolute blast to be with these guys. It's 40. I think we play 48 games. I got to report June 1st. We'll work out for 3 or 4 days, and then the season starts. And then they play every day. They use wood bats, Major League Baseball supplies, everything.
Isn't that great?
Just like we had brand new baseballs to hit and bat in practice. These kids got brand new baseballs. They use wooden bats. We have a strength and conditioning guy that travels with us, an analytics guy, which is a whole different show to talk. Uh,
Right.
but they could not ask for anything more. Our furthest bus ride's 4 hours over to Greenville, Tennessee, and
And where are you? What town are you in? You told me.
I'm
I forgot.
at Danville, Virginia,
Okay,
and
that's right.
yeah, so we've got Burlington in the league, Bluefield, West Virginia.
All
Um,
those towns have been in baseball forever.
So it's really cool, and once again, the relationships that you develop with these kids, it's just tremendous. We had a kid last year, Michael Callan Moss, that signed a free agent deal with Kansas City, and so he's having great success. He calls me the other night on the phone and says, "Mick, I'm 0 for 20," and I was like, "Well, dude, it's probably going to happen again." You know, you
Right.
you you know this isn't a sprint; it's a journey, and
Right.
so he texted me about 3 or 4 days later, just gave him a little small deal. He said, "Hey, I feel like I'm pulling off." So, all right, just focus on right center just a little bit more.
Right.
And text me back and with his numbers and said, "That's been a pretty good week." And that to me is the stuff that is so cool.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I get back in baseball. Some of the new managers that are in the league this year, Dave Anderson, won a World Series with the Dodgers. Uh,
Yeah.
Turner Ward just came on board. I'm trying to think of some of the Jack Wilson is managing in Greenville. So there's a lot of ex Major League players, ex Major League coaches, and it's a whole lot of fun. But for me, you know, we focused on winning so much throughout our careers, and to take the winning out of this and focus on how to win, you leave a kid out there to get out of an inning, to figure out how do I pitch to get out of an inning. You try to
Sure.
teach a kid that, hey, you don't have to get a base hit with a runner at third to drive in a run. Sometimes a nice ground ball to short will get us a run. And to me, teaching kids how to win instead of just going full force, trying to win, like our pitching is set up where they know what they're going and how many innings they're going. We don't get guys up to come in like late in the game to close. When it's your turn to pitch, you pitch and you go out there and you do what you can do. And like last year, I think they changed, like there was no bunting. You couldn't bunt before the eighth inning. Which I mean, hell, I ain't gonna do that anyway. These kids are there to learn how to swing the bat.
Right.
So we probably sacrificed bunt maybe 4 times last summer. And it's kind of a funny story. There's a kid named Antonio Cordero that he was a catcher and he was struggling a little bit. And I pinch hit for him one night. And sorry, I went back to the apartment. I got to thinking about it, and I called him into the office the next day. And I said, Antonio, I said, I owe you an apology. And he looked at me. He's like, why, Nick? And I said, how are you ever going to learn how to hit in the ninth inning unless somebody lets you hit in the ninth inning?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And he just looked at me and I said, I'll never pinch hit for you again. And I didn't the rest of the year. And I let the kids play, and because that's what it was about. And you talk about things, maybe when they get back to the dugout, a pitcher like, hey, what were you thinking about in this situation? Because the catchers call their own game. They're in college and they're not used to doing
so good.
Yeah, they're
I
not.
love everything about this league. That sounds so great.
It's strictly development. Now, granted, you don't want to get your ass beat every night, but I do not emphasize winning. I emphasize development, and hopefully we send those kids out of there better than when they got there.
Oh, you will. You'll make a big difference in that. And
Yeah,
when do you guys start? You start next month?
Yeah, we got to report June 1st. Like I said, we'll have 3 days of working out. We probably won't have our whole team there because we'll still have some guys in. Hopefully, they're playing in super regionals and going to Omaha. I mean, they've gotten a lot more into the Big Four conferences, more Southeastern Conference. I got some Kansas State guys. I got some Oklahoma State guys. I got some smaller school guys. I've actually got 2 kids from Australia this year that they've these and brought some high school kids over from Australia. So I'm very interested to see what they do. But you don't make out your own roster. They do it in New York for you, and you get who you get, and you coach them. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, the Australian players, I've had them in San Diego. We had a couple. They're such fun players to teach, and they play hard, and they come to play. And Australian, and I know baseball is getting bigger over there, but my buddy that was on a couple days ago, Mike Couche, he been a pitching coordinator forever. He just won the World Series this year or last year in Australia. He said it's so much fun, but it's the same kind of concept. I don't think Major League Baseball does that, obviously, like they are your deal. But these organizations and these teams and these leagues, some of these are so organized and so well done. And it sounds like the one that you're with. I mean, those are the kind of things. Play the game to have fun and to get better and to learn. Don't play the game to try and get to the big leagues. You're trying to play the game because it's a process, right?
Well, and it's like when I tell kids, it's like we're trying to get you ready for the next level. So if it's a young kid, okay, we're trying to get you ready to play high school baseball. Once we get ready for high school, let's get you ready to go play college, whatever level that is. Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, junior college, whatever it is. After that, okay, let's try to get you ready to go play pro ball, because that was all of our dreams. And so we're just trying to help them. And we're doing what we should do, and that's pass the game on. And so when something like that happens, when you see a kid sign a free agent contract, with Kansas City, and he's got a chance, man, you would like this dude. Big first, really mobile, a lot of power, because we got a big ballpark we played in. It was like Milwaukee. Our ballpark.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah.
it's big, and so it's a lot of fun to watch these guys have success, and like I said, you let them play, and now that doesn't mean that they may not get their ass chewed out every once in a while.
Oh yeah, that's just
Still,
part of it.
yeah, you still got to do that, but overall, just telling stories with them, sharing stuff. They'll ask questions. Who's the best player you ever saw? Well, I mean, obviously, that's hard to do because we've seen so many.
Oh
Uh, I'd probably have put Griffey right at the top of that list. I mean, just as far as overall talent. But do you look back and I mean, guys that get hit. Kirby Puckett.
yeah.
Mattingly. I mean,
Oh
George Brett could pop a ball up and look like he meant to do it. You know, so,
yeah.
uh,
There's been so many players like
just
Mike
hard.
Trout and Barry
Yeah,
Bonds and like it's unbelievable.
yeah. I mean, the
Um,
easiest question for me to answer was they asked who was the toughest guy to face, and to me, it was no doubt Randy Johnson.
yeah.
I mean, he was the
Mine
toughest
was
to face, and
mine was Nolan.
well,
Nolan.
there was other guys too. Eric Hansen. I mean, he could have told me what was coming, and I could have taken a boat paddle in there and not hit it. You know, but
That was that was who was it in Toronto? Remember the Dave Steve?
yeah,
I
nasty.
could have a tennis racket and I would have made no,
Yeah,
wouldn't
nasty.
have,
Well,
oh,
he had that late nasty
oh,
slider that was just filthy.
I
He was
had no business facing him.
well, yeah, he was hard on left-handers too because he'd throw that thing off your back foot and you'd swing over right over the top of it. But
Yeah.
it's fun, man. It really is. I have a great time doing it. Like I said, it's only 48 games, so it goes by really fast.
Yeah.
Uh, and they play every day. They got Mondays off, so it's as close as minor leagues experience as they can get. And what's really funny about it, and you can appreciate this, these kids are coming from college swinging aluminum bats. Now all of a sudden
Right.
they wood every day, and about 3 weeks in it, they're dragging ass. Because all of a sudden that wood's getting a little bit heavier. So
The
uh,
end of it's getting a little bit heavier.
we're starting to drag a little bit, but once again, they Major League Baseball's done an incredible job. These
Good for
kids,
them.
they could not want for anything. They pay for them to get there. They actually pay them a little bit meal money every day. So put them in places to live. They put us and the coaches in places to live, and it's been a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun.
I want you to make sure you come back, maybe at the end of the season or sometime, and we'll talk about the season.
Yeah,
Because that sounds like so much fun. I mean,
I'd love to. If you want to get involved, I'd love to get involved. They are looking for big league people with big league experience. Come in, be like a hitting guy and stuff. They're always looking for those type dudes.
I think that I miss it. I miss going into the cages. Like I have some people now that I give private lessons to, but I've had them for 5 or 6 years. And I was, a couple years ago, I was doing 6, 7 lessons a day. And I
Right.
just, with my 3 back surgeries, I can't really do as much anymore. But I miss just playing catch. I miss throwing BP. I love throwing BP. I love being around the cage.
I
And,
throw it every
you know,
day. You
yeah,
know, I throw
yeah,
a couple pounds of BP every day. I'm like you. I enjoy the cage and practice more than I do the games.
oh
You know,
yeah,
where you're really working on stuff. Now you want to see it happen in the games, what you worked on. But
right.
I love throwing BP because first of all, I like watching kids swing from the front. I want to see their path and going and stuff like that. And um, so it's a lot of fun for me, to watch them and then put them out there in the lineup and let them go. And there's some really really talented kids all
I
throughout the
bet.
league. And the best thing for me is too is that if I see something on another team, I ain't afraid to tell a kid that hey, maybe you might try this. And I think that's the way all the managers and coaches are. They're very helpful towards one another. We all have like a gentleman's agreement. College baseball, chattering out of the dugout is unbelievable. And we just kind of like tell our guys, just, hey, shut the up.
Yeah.
Play play the game.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
uh,
sometimes that has to happen, you know?
absolutely it does. But we just had our managers meeting in New York, and it's great when everybody's on the same page as far as developing players and stuff like that. So it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like you said, when development is more important than actually winning, then the recipe seems like that's how you're going to win. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean,
Yeah.
that sets a precedence that, just go out there and play the best you can, get better at what you're doing, and good things will happen.
Yeah. And then, I have two rules, and one of them's be on time. That bus will leave if you're not 5 minutes early before it leaves, you
Yeah.
know? And the second one is play hard. That's
Yeah.
all you can do, man. Play hard. Be on time and play hard. It's all I care
Good,
about. And
good for
the
you.
rest of it, we'll work on it. We'll work on the things that we need to do. But you know, overall, I mean, it's been wonderful experience so far.
Well, I can tell that you like doing it, and that's at this stage of our lives, it's like when you get to do something that you enjoy that pertains to baseball. It's more power to us.
Yeah, once again, it goes back to just like you doing with the lesson. We're just paying the game back because
Yeah.
somebody paid the game back to us,
Right.
about our career, our baseball career. And it's just so gratifying when you see, I had the chance my first year in Cape Cod to be with Spencer Torkelson. And now the kids, hitting cleanup in Detroit
I'm
and having a very good season
mashing.
so far, and
Yeah.
it's fun to watch guys like that. I had two kids that I had in Cape Cod 4 years ago, and they're both in Double A now. And, so they called me last year when they were in Tulsa, and it's like, "Hey, can you come up and watch us hit?" And I'm like, "Guys, I can't do that." You know, I
I
send me
love those conversations.
send me some video, but I can't step on anybody's toes like that. But,
Yeah.
you know, when they have the confidence in you and what you've been able to try to teach them a little bit, and they reach out to you, it's such a great experience, man.
Yeah, it really is. It's giving back, and everybody talks about that. This stuff we didn't invent that. We didn't invent this. This stuff has come down, and we've all stuck to the same thing. And it's like who can talk about it the best or the simplest is. I mean, see ball and hit ball. You always want to think that, try to make it as simple as you can. But there are things that are imperative in your
Yeah,
swing that you have to do.
yeah, absolutely. And the hardest part for me sometimes is telling parents when I look right at them and I'm talking to their hitters like, you're not listening to mom and dad. You're not listening to the first base coach. You get in the box and just like you said, see it, hit it. That's the only
Yeah,
thing you're thinking about.
right.
And me, like, what are you talking about? Well, if you get in there and you think, "Where's my hands, my drip?"
Oh,
You're forgetting why you're in there, and that's to see it and hit it because you're
right.
thinking mechanics. Boom, balls by you, and it's like, okay, can we start over? Like, no,
That all that thinking stuff, and we know this, all that thinking stuff is done down in the cage. You
yes,
step in that batter's box, man, you're free. You're just looking.
yeah.
I'm anticipating a ball right down the middle. I'm ready to hit.
I mean, you might be looking for a pitch, and a lot of times young hitters, and it took me a long time to learn this, to sometimes set on pitches.
Right.
I'm looking for a certain pitch, set on it. If you're being pitched a certain way, set on it. And young hitters, when you see it finally happen, like we had kids last year that they're getting, 2-1 changeups and stuff like that. Well, set on it one time. If you do that and you knock the crap out of it, what's it going to do? It's going to bring the fastball back to you because you've made the adjustment.
You were a good student.
Yeah, and what I tell kids now, and I thought a mom was going to choke me one day when I was working with a 13-year-old kid because I'm an idiot. I'm just talking. But I tell kids, it's like, I want you to think about two letters when you're hitting, and that's T and A. And the mom looked at me like, where are you going with it? And so I tell them, like, when you're standing on that on deck circle, trust what your eyes are telling you. If the dude's throwing 80, he's going to throw 80 when you get in there. So don't think all of a sudden that the guy's going to throw 90 just because you stepped in the box. He's going to throw what he throws. So trust
Right.
what you when you get in the box, trust your swing. Trust it. And then attack. Everything you
Right.
do is attack. If you're going to swing it, swing it.
Right.
Let swing at a bad pitch, swing at the bad pitch. Everything is with aggression. And
Right.
So then the mom sat back in her seat and she was kind of, she understood what I was saying. And the same thing goes for pitchers, you know, trust what your eyes are telling you, how those guys are reacting. Trust your stuff, attack the strike zone. So
Let me ask you this: who's the toughest pitcher to catch?
for the Detroit Tigers,
Just no, I
prob-
mean all
well,
time. Who's the toughest person to catch?
well, Kevin Ritz was really hard to catch
Heavy
because,
sinker.
and
Didn't
Doherty,
he have a sinker?
uh,
Oh yeah,
John Doherty was hard to catch because he had a late hard sinker, but Ritzy was hard to catch because they didn't know where it was going and he threw hard. I mean,
yeah,
it got to the point where Sparky just told me, he said, set up right down the middle and just let's see where it goes.
yeah.
Uh,
He was a horse, wasn't he?
yeah.
He was a strong kid. He
Oh
threw
man.
hard,
Yeah. But
heavy.
the plate would move around on him, but he would cut one, he would sink one, and you just never knew what it was going to be. And you were on pins and needles back there. Then you had other guys like, Frankie Tanana, could take a pair of tweezers back there and catch with him. So,
Right.
um, but I would probably say in Detroit is probably Ritzy. And the best pitcher that I caught for me personally was Dave Stewart.
Yeah.
Stu, he was, I caught 21 wins one year in Oakland, caught every one because Tony La Russa was really big in pitchers and catchers matching up together and stuff. Didn't really matter who the opposing pitcher was. He wanted his pitchers and catchers to be together. So
Right.
he was probably the best pitcher that I caught. Obviously in Texas we had Pudge Rodriguez. I didn't catch down there, and he was the best catcher that I ever saw. This dude
Was
was
he?
awesome. Oh, he was
Oh,
awesome. He
yeah. I
was awesome.
played against him. I mean,
Yeah,
we all played against each other, and yeah, he
yeah,
was unbelievable.
yeah. He was
Unbelievable.
awesome.
But
So,
that was. Don't you think that like the catchers today? Do you get a sense that the catchers are smaller in stature?
when they
It
get
just
down,
seems like it. I mean,
when they
I remember we were seeing Lance Parrish and we were seeing you and we were seeing like these guys are walking up to the plate and
Carlton
they
Fisk is
didn't
huge.
Carlton Fisk. Oh,
He was a
huge.
yeah, real big boy. Rich Gedman, big boy. You know,
Yeah.
they were guys
Veritek.
throughout the league.
Veritek.
Yeah, I mean, we had a big team in Detroit.
Yeah.
I looked around one night and I made the comment is like, I think I was playing left field and Gibby was playing center and you were playing right. And it's like, when's the last time you saw three big white dudes in the outfield? But
two of them aren't two
yeah,
of them aren't real fast.
but yeah, the guy in left field really wasn't. But I don't know. I watch catchers these days and the one leg stuff and jerking pitches. I'm surprised umpires will let them get away with it, quite honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just different. I mean, the game is the same. It's being played differently.
That's exactly right. Different
So,
leaders.
yeah, and back in our era, we would not have done the crap that these guys are doing. Parading around the bases and bat,
No.
and you didn't do that. And I
No.
think
And
that
like you and I, we've talked about this so many times, but there was all of us. I mean, we hit a home run. Nobody stood there and showed anybody up.
oh
We all ran fast. I don't think
man,
anybody ever ran the bases faster than you,
well I didn't.
right?
I forget who hit it. So, but I think that's one thing to do, and that's one thing I try to tell young kids is, hey, let's respect the game and respect those people in the other dugout. You know, if
Right.
if you if you want to show them what's what, just tell them to look at the scoreboard at the end of the day,
Right.
and the scoreboard will dictate if you can hoot and holler at them or not. But and I think that's one of the things in this league, this collegiate league, that they're really working hard on is guys getting back to respecting the game and not pimping home runs and doing stuff like that. I understand the celebrations but we didn't do that. We knew better. You just knew better. You knew that there were going to be consequences. You're
Right.
going to
And there
get
should be, I think.
yeah,
You
you're going
show
to
me,
get so
you show me up, there's going to be consequences. I show you up, then I mean, I get that, and that's why we just played. It's
yeah,
like there wasn't any of that. There wasn't any of that stuff, and that's the problem. And I'm not trying to be Mr. Boring, but a lot of the younger players. And that's what I was going to ask you. A lot of the younger players, you can go see them. They're 12 years old and they got hand pads and they got shin guards and they got all this stuff. Major league players they're being looked at and they're being followed. And these kids where they show up, they do all the same stuff as they do.
Yeah,
And
we had guys, they're hitting doubles and they're getting to second base and they're doing their cheerleading stuff back to the dugout. And I said, guys, why don't you find out where the ball is first? All right. If you're going to get ready to get really embarrassed when you're doing all this cheerleading stuff to the dugout and you don't have no idea where the ball is.
yeah,
But I think that's just, it's changed and kids watch that, I mean, those elbow part guards that these hitters are wearing, those were targets.
yeah, they were right.
That was an aiming spot. But, just league wise, you knew it wasn't a matter of the National League or the American League. You just knew you did not disrespect the game and you didn't disrespect the people in the other dugout.
Right.
So,
Or
my opinion, but the old school coming out in us,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like you. You said something really interesting. I'm all about the celebration. It's different. We're not used to it. And that's all it is. Maybe we need to adjust. I don't know. But
I have a little bit, I mean, still that grumpy old out every once in a while, with the celebrations and stuff. And it's just like, guys, I appreciate you hit a double. I appreciate you want to celebrate, but at least find out where the ball is coming in from the outfield before you do anything. Okay. Let's at least back to the infield before you start turning around and celebrating to the dugout. So
yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to hearing about what's going to happen this year. You guys
Rob,
are going to
perfect example. We were in the championship game last year, and one of our pitchers, I won't say his name, struck a guy out, and then he gave him the bow and arrow. Got him down with the bow and arrow. And I called timeout, and at the time we were winning 10-2 in like the 6th inning. I mean, the game's out of control, and he shoots him down. And I called timeout to go out to the mound. I said, "Don't ever do that shit again." And I turned around and walked off.
Good for you.
Yeah, and I said, "Get the hitter. Focus on getting the hitter." He said, "Don't do that shit." And it got
But
two
see,
more
the
to win.
and see that's the problem. They see this stuff on TV, and I'm not being Mr. Negative, but they see this stuff on TV and they think it's okay. And some managers do not play that game. And it's like, I'm glad to see you, doing that.
I want them to have fun, but at the same time, there's people over there in that other dugout that
aren't having fun.
Oh, the same thing make you laugh will make you cry.
Right.
You better remember that. Congratulations on your career. It was phenomenal. I know we've talked about my stuff, but your stuff was phenomenal as well. It was so much fun having you as a teammate, because once again, we were all kind of this same mentality, just kind of blue collar, we'll show you.
Don't forget Inky. We had Inky for a while.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. So there was just a bunch of them, Tran, Lou Whitaker.
Yeah.
Sweet Lou.
Yeah. I want to have Lou on soon on this. Thank you for the compliments. But I want to say it was a true pleasure having you as a teammate, and I truly respected how you played and what you're doing now. I think that league's going to see they've already had you there, but they're not going to let you get away from that. I can tell you're going to be good at that.
Well, I appreciate it, my friend. It means a lot, and our friendship means a lot. I know that, sometimes that we've kind of all gone our own ways and we don't talk as much as we should. But when you reached out, it's like, the hell, this is a no-brainer, man. I got to go do this.
we walk with limps.
Yeah.
But it was all worth it. Well worth it. Because,
yeah.
and you know what? This is the reason why it was all worth it. When I get together and talk baseball with my friends and my ex-teammates, it's like, I look forward to doing this so much. It's so fun.
Once again, I just go back to the phrase, it's hard work, working hard. Do it, man.
Mickey
It's cool.
Tettleton, I just got to tell you, it's been a true pleasure having you here.
All right,
today.
brother. Good to talk. Look great, man. Let's do it
You
again.
come on anytime you want.
Absolutely, man. You guys just reach out and we'll do it again.
Okay. And good luck this season. I'm anxious to hear. Keep
All
in
right, bro.
touch with everything, and thanks for being on.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
All right, thanks, Mick. See you.
See ya.